Hey guys, Gathering the Magic back again, and in this video I want to do kind of a more in-depth look at land and specifically on buildings. Now they've already said that buildings for land, you can only have one building for each land plot. So whether you get a common land, rare, epic, legendary, you can only build one building on each land plot. And going by the information they've given us already, there's 4 different resources that you can acquire on your natural lands. They are grain, wood, stone, and ore. So there's one building for each of those to harvest, to refine, and to store those items. Then you also have 6 different magical resources that you can acquire if you have a magical land. And for the magical land, those can also be harvested and they can be stored. So there's another 12 buildings. And then also there are occupied lands that you have to fight monsters to get their essences. So in all, there's 26 different plots of land that you would need if you wanted to do everything. If you wanted to build every building for the natural resources, every building for the magical resources, you had a plot of land that was occupied, you could get monster essences, and then finally one plot of land to do item and spell manufacturing. So most people aren't going to have 26 plots of land. So the question is, what are you going to do if you only have a few plots of land? I will get to that in a little bit, but first some other questions that we have are, how will storage work? One of the things that I noticed was for storage, they talked about like natural resource harvesting, refining, and storage. So let's say, for example, wood. You can harvest the wood off of your land with one building. Then on another plot of land, you could refine that wood. I'm assuming you could turn it into something like lumber, and lumber will be used to build and repair buildings. And then another natural resource building is storage. Now what I was having the question of, is that storing of the wood, or is that storing of the lumber, the refined item that you make? So that's one of the main questions I have. So are there going to be 2 different types of storage buildings for each resource? One to actually store the wood and one to store the lumber. So that could make a big difference too. But for now I'm going to assume that storage means storing the refined item. Okay, so next, after we figure out, how is storage going to work, once I harvest your resource, do you have to sell it right away in the marketplace if I don't have a storage building on another land plot? So let's say, for example, you have one plot of land and it is a mountain and it produces stone. Okay, I harvest it, I harvest my stone, let's say 25 stone. Okay, if you don't have a storage building, does that go like into your inventory and then you can start harvesting another 25? Or are you forced to put that on the marketplace and sell it so that you have 0 basically on your land and then you can start harvesting again? So that's one of the main questions that I have for storage, is how that's going to work. Another thing is, will a storage building hold all the magical or natural resources or just one? So let's say, for example, you have the mountain and you build a storage building. Are you only allowed to store stone there, or can you store any of the natural resources there? Can you store grain there? Could you store wood there? So that's another question that we can only speculate at right now. Buildings also will have different levels. What's the max level for buildings? And I think it will be at least 3, just because in the picture here that they showed, of course this is an old picture, you can kind of see some rough artwork of, it looks like a mine, and there's level 1, level 2, and level 3 mine. So the different levels will determine how much of the item that you get. So just a question of how high that you have to level, how many resources do you have to spend to get it to level 3, or whatever the max level is. Another question is, how quickly are these buildings going to deteriorate and need to be repaired? They said in some of the notes that you're going to need a combination of resources to build, upgrade, and maintain each building. So these buildings, as you use them, are going to deteriorate over time. So once they start deteriorating, at what point do you have to repair them, and can you still use them while you're repairing them? My guess would be no. So this is something to keep in mind. If you're harvesting your grain and all of a sudden your grain building starts to get damaged, once you do your collection, you may have to stop, and it may take 4, 6, 8 hours, 24 hours, who knows, to repair your building, at which point you're not gathering any more resources. So keep in mind, you're not going to be able to gather resources, 24 hours a day. So you are going to have some downtime there. And another question is, does the level of the building determine how many monsters and summoners can work the land? I think that's probably a pretty obvious yes. They did show in a artwork for the land card a picture of a natural forest, and someone had built a sawmill on that land, and on the right side of the card it has a number 5. Now what I'm thinking that number 5 means is that's kind of like a mana cap for that sawmill. So you can have monsters and summoners with a total mana cost of up to 5. Now since most summoners are either 3 or 4, even if you use a, say, 3 mana summoner, that leaves 2 mana that you could use for monsters to work the land. So one thing I'm thinking of is people that are talking about loading up on monsters to work the land. You may want to start loading up on monsters that cost 1 or 2 mana. There are a lot of cheap chaos cards that all cost 1 mana that might be a very good pickup. So just something to think about there. Another thing I put down here is the number of buildings that I think, or the different types of buildings I think you can build depending on how many plots you own. Like I think a lot of people only have 1 plot. If you have 1 plot, pretty much you're limited to, you're going to be a harvester. You are going to build a harvest building on whatever that one type of land is that you own. The only other option I can see you having is if you want to use your 1 plot of land to just craft your item, because that's what most people want to do. They want to craft these items and spells. But this is going to be extremely difficult because you're going to have to buy all the refined items to build your crafting building. You're going to have to buy all the essences off the marketplace. You're going to have to buy all the magical resources off the marketplace to craft the item. You're not going to have a place to store them, so you're going to have to buy the essences and resources one at a time. So let's say, for example, you have 1 plot of land, you have a crafting building on it, you want to craft a death splinter item. Okay, you're going to have to buy all the refined items to make your crafting building first, and then once it's built, you're going to have to buy probably grain when it's refined into bread. You're going to have to buy bread off the marketplace to feed your monsters for creating the item. You're going to have to buy a magical resource for death off of the market, and you're going to have to buy an essence. So you will be able to craft on your own, but it's going to be very, very expensive. If you have 2 plots, you've got several different options that you could do. Probably the most common one is you're going to get 2 plots that are common. So you're going to have, if hopefully they're the same type, you're going to have one where you actually harvest the item and another one where you refine it. So let's say, for example, you get 2 forests. One you will harvest the wood, and then the other one you're going to refine the wood into lumber. If you end up getting lucky and get like a natural plot and then a magical plot, just build 1 harvest building for each of those on your 2 plots. So you're going to harvest, let's say, wood, and then for the magical, let's say you're going to harvest the death essence, or death resource, I should say. So you're going to harvest both of those and put them on the marketplace. Another option you could have if you have 2 of the same natural resource is one could be refining and one storage. So you will go to the marketplace and you will buy the wood off the marketplace. You will refine it in your sawmill, and then you will store it. So that is another option. Another option you could do is you could be the refiner, where let's say you have 1 forest and 1 mountain. You could build a building on each where you're just going to refine. So on the mountain you're going to refine the stone into brick. And in the forest, you're going to refine the wood into lumber. So this is going to be a person that's going to be in demand, because I think most of the people are going to either be harvesting or crafting. You're not going to have a lot of people that are going to want to just refine. But I think this might be an option for you if you want to actually make a lot of income in the game, is we're going to need a lot of people that are going to be refiners. So refiners are going to be in high demand. If you have two plots and for some reason you got super lucky and they're both occupied, the only thing you should build there are harvesting, because essences are like the most desired thing in the game. They're one of two things that you need to craft an item. Essences, you can only, of course, you can only harvest an essence off an essence land, an occupied land. So don't build your crafting building on an occupied land. Don't build a storage building there if it gives you the option. These should only be used for essence harvesting. If you have three plots, you can read below. There's different things that you can do, you know, whether you want to go the route of harvest the natural resource there, refine it, and then store it. You know, you could do that. There's several different options. A lot of it depends on what you end up with. Like I said, most of the plots are going to be natural. So you're going to have some mix, and they're going to be different types. So you pretty much have to go with what you're dealt. Once you start getting up to 5 plots, you have a lot more options as far as being able to craft and store the items. You really aren't going to be able to do much with storage buildings if you have less than 5 plots, because it doesn't really make a lot of sense to just store something and then not be able to use it. So another option for 5 plots, which might be very beneficial, would be to have 4 of the plots as refining for the 4 natural resources. Sell those on the marketplace to generate some good income to buy essences, and then have your 5th plot be crafting, where you're actually going to craft your item. The sweet spot, I think, is 12 plots. Because if you can get 12 plots and get the right mix, you could store all 4 for the natural resources. You could store all 6 of the magical resources. Of course, you have to buy these off the market. You hopefully have 1 harvesting essence building that you can build if you have an occupied building, and then no matter what your 12th plot is, you can use that to craft. So this is going to be where you can just bounce around. It's like maybe you want to craft a death item, and then next week you want to craft an earth item. You're going to need to store your resources, your magical resources. So you're going to need storage buildings. So this will give you a lot of flexibility. I think I heard someone say that, you know, once land is revealed, once people get common plots, if they're not very good, that they're going to go for under $100. I strongly disagree for this simple fact. Every plot of land is valuable since you can build a crafting building item on it. If you get the worst piece of land in the game, let's say you get a desert and it produces ore or whatever, and ore's in low demand, and you're like, oh, this is useless, I'm going to sell it. You can still build a crafting building on it, which is the most important building in the game. So any plot of land, if people start listing the common land really, really cheaply, I think they're going to get scarfed up by people that realize this. So I think this is a big heads up. Is once land is revealed and you see the land go for you know, under $100 or cheap, that would be something to strongly look at, because it does have the possibility of you being able to just plop it down and build a crafting building on it, and that's what you want. Another tip is don't build anything on an occupied land plot except for essence harvesting. Like I said, essences are one of the 2 items that you need to create an item. They are only found on occupied land plots, and the only way you can get them is to have a harvesting building there for essences. So any occupied land plot should only be used for that. Okay guys, there you have it. Those are just some of my ideas and some speculations on buildings. Let me know if there's any other questions that you have about buildings. Like I said, a lot of this is not known yet. A lot of this is speculation. There are some things that we do know, But one of the main things that I want you to take away from this video is that every plot of land is valuable, even the ones that are common. So don't get discouraged if you open your one land plot and it's a common forest. I mean, you can use that. You can build a harvesting uh, building on it to get some income from that. And then after a while, once you build up some income, you can destroy that harvesting building, build your crafting building on it, and start making items. So any other questions, please leave them in the comment section below. I hope you found this video, hope you found it useful. So thanks again for watching, and please make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. I will update more content like this in the future. The next video I'm looking to do will be based on totems, so keep an eye out for that. And thank you again for watching, and happy grinding. We'll see you soon.